So this morning's presentation is on going paperless on public works projects. The key challenges, the benefits, and the tools is what we're going to look at this morning. We're going to look at the benefits to you guys as public works owners, public works project managers. We're going to look at the challenges and team buy-in and so forth, and then the tools. And with the objectives of going paperless, we want to get rid of these rooms of bankers' boxes. We want to get rid of the hanging files and manage our projects better. And so when we talk about the three primary benefits of going paperless on public works projects, we're talking about the cost savings, the risk mitigation, and the information access for the project participants. And within that information access, we're talking about three subcomponents. We're talking about the ability to search and report on the project information, the physical access to the information, and then the long-term records retention and reuse on these projects. So the first primary benefit we're going to jump into is the cost savings. There's a case study we did recently with one of our clients where the client went through a project that they completed, a $100 million hospital expansion project, and figured out that they had saved $400,000 just in purchasing paper. Now this is a large cost savings just on the paper cost of the project. And they've been giving this presentation and using it as a marketing tool, saying, hey, what are the advantages of getting rid of the paper on these projects? And it is a substantial amount of money that gets wasted on these jobs. And this was the contractor that did this cost savings calculation. And so the contractors these days on projects, especially more complex projects, healthcare, public works, infrastructure jobs where you have a lot of participants, a lot of information needs to get conveyed, there's going to be a substantial cost savings to the team and for the whole project team. And it also helps with the buy-in as well. Contractors recognize the cost savings. A lot of the clients we work with come to us and say, hey, how do we get our contractors to buy in? We tell them it's not a problem. The contractors recognize the cost savings of going electronic and eliminating the paper from the process. There's a very large cost and burden on these guys to turn in 7-8 copies of paper submittals, RFIs, and track all that paper on the project. And as a public works agency owner, you also need to look at not just the contractor's costs, but also your own costs, the cost of the architects, the consultants, the subconsultants, the stakeholders there on your projects as well. How much are all these organizations wasting on paper on these projects? And it starts to add up substantially. If we look at the Washington Hospital case study, it's just the contractor that saved $400,000 in paper. That doesn't include the owner's representative, the owner, the architects, the subconsultants, all below them. So those cost savings become quite expensive on these jobs when you start looking at all the stakeholders involved and the amount of paper that gets shuffled throughout the project, and then the amount of paper that gets destroyed at the end of the project. And then looking at the cost savings, it's not just the cost to print the paper. You also got to look at the shipping, the filing, the tracking, scanning it if you want to convert it to electronic, and then archiving the paper is substantial and completely unnecessary. Paper is just an interim medium to communicate information. And with the electronic tools available these days, there is no need for it on capital projects. The other big cost savings that a lot of people ignore too when going to electronic is the potential cost savings on discovery. Everybody wants their projects to run smoothly. Nobody wants to plan for discovery at the beginning of the job, but we all have to keep it in mind. Everybody's on a bad project or a difficult project where the attorneys have gotten involved. And one of the big cost savings where you'll see a lot of money is if a project does go into discovery, there's a 35 to 65% reduction in discovery costs using ESI, electronically stored information, compared to paper. If you can turn over a DVD or a USB flash drive to your legal counsel, they can run their e-discovery tools on it. They can search all that a lot more productively than they can a banker's box full of paper documents. And it's going to have much more accurate records for them as well in analyzing that claim or case. So it becomes a huge cost savings, especially when these team members down here, legal costs run $300 to $1,000 an hour depending on your counsel and what they're doing for you guys. And so that's a big cost savings for you guys that you really want to consider at the beginning of a project. When we look at the second big benefit, it's risk mitigation. Tracking information electronically reduces a lot of risks on the project. One of our clients provided us with some statistics. This is a wastewater treatment digester expansion project with East Bay Mud and Brown and Caldwell that they've been using EADOC on. And so by tracking the information electronically, we can produce these statistics very easily. And what they found on their job is that 46 out of 121 RFIs were issued, responded to, and closed within 1 day or less. The fastest RFI turnaround was 1 hour and 10 minutes. You cannot measure this level of accuracy with paper and Excel spreadsheets. It requires electronic tools, moving data electronically across the project teams to track and control this information. And this is a huge risk mitigation tool for you guys. If you can make sure that every RFI gets responded to in the correct amount of time within your contractual requirements, every submittal gets responded to, that eliminates the potential for changes in claims from the contractors. And so that's a huge incentive to get rid of the paper that could potentially cost you money if it doesn't get responded to on time. The other advantage too is because the information is moving faster, it allows the engineers and the reviewers of those RFIs and SMILs to produce higher quality responses and focus more on their job than just manually tracking and processing that paperwork. And the second big benefit of the risk mitigation is accurate and transparent tracking and record keeping. With electronic systems, computers are great. They repeat the same process over and over and over again, and they do it the same way. Human beings are not good at that. You know, we like to change, we like to evolve, we like to improve, and so doing the same repetitive task day in and day out is not our specialty. And so that's what's great about computers and doing information electronically is they're going to log the date and time that SMIL was sent, responded to, read every single time. And it's going to be a very accurate and transparent record that's going to help reduce the risk for potential delays and claims associated with your documentation and information management. And the third major benefit here is the information access. And so when we talk about information access, we're talking about the ability to quickly search and locate information and related documentation. We're talking about keyword searches. You know, Google has made the search engine of searching the web very easy and very famous among all the project participants. Google actually didn't develop search. They just developed a method to index all the content across the web. Search has been around for a very long time. And so the ability to search electronic information is a very powerful tool that you can't do with paper. You know, I can punch in a keyword like pipe and bring up the shop drawings, the RFIs, the change orders, everything relevant to pipe on my project. It also allows you to develop information relationships very efficiently within the system. We'll take a look at some examples of those that you can do with electronic information. And the third benefit to information access is what we call information anytime, anywhere. That's your office, your job site, a conference. As long as you're connected to the internet or when you have electricity, you've got access to your project information. And this is a huge benefit. This can be on the plant, this can be out of a trailer, main office, and everybody's got access to current information. And this is a huge time savings. I've got a information access from the field case study. I pulled this from Apple's website. It's a construction services company where they figured out they cut 8 hours a week per employee in paperwork by having their team using tablets and devices in the field. So this way, no matter where those team members were, which project site they were on, they could have access to the information. And the tablet savings here are huge, especially for the inspectors on our clients' projects. Inspectors, project superintendents, mobile staff that are traveling to different projects who need information at the touch of their fingers. And so it becomes a much more beneficial tool. The amount of data that's stored in these tablets or accessible through these tablets is equal to rooms and rooms of filing cabinets. It's just not physically possible. The inspector would have to bring an 18-wheeler full of paperwork with them to the site. So these are all just some of the great benefits for you guys of getting rid of the paper on the project. Other things to consider too, long-term records retention. With paper drawing files, they're going to degrade over time. Now there is degradation with electronic files, depending on the media you store them on. But with electronic files, it's very easy to move them from one medium to the next. You know, you can copy a DVD to a new DVD. You can move it to a server, depending on your electronic records retention policies. The other thing is data reuse. So after you've built that facility, you've got your brand new police station ready to go, you're storing all this file in your banker's boxes. 10 years later, police department comes back to you and says, hey, we want to renovate this facility. You got to go back to those banker's boxes full of drawings and deliver those to your design engineer. Provide zero value to the design engineer other than they get to re-enter that data into their CAD system and redo all those drawings. It's just paper communication is very inefficient for you guys on the projects. Whereas the electronic files, if you hand it over a DVD to your design engineer, they can use all those CAD files and then they can start to draw their renovations directly on it. They don't have to recreate those as-built or those existing drawings in AutoCAD. It's all there for them. Other major aspect is information reuse. You know, a lot of these times you'll manage this information during the design and construction of a capital project. And what you want to do is after the project's built, you want to continue to use that information. The O&M manuals, the warranties, the test reports, everything that you've developed during the design and construction, you're going to reuse in operations and maintenance. And so what you want to take a look at doing is how do I reuse this information? How do I turn over this data to my operations and maintenance group so they can use it in their facility management solutions? And so they can track warranties, so they can track the testing of these products, they can track outages, all related to these major materials. And that's what electronic information gives you. One of the benefits I was showing you is the information access relationships. This is a diagram here that you can do. And this is things you can do electronically. You could do this with paper, but it would take a lot of labor and a very big wall to go and post all this paper out. And what I can see here with this relationship diagram is I've got a proposal request number 1. I can see the change order it's related to. I can see the risk item it's related to. I can see schedule activities, RFIs, memos, drawings, all the documentation and communication relevant to it here. And with electronic tools, at the click of a button, I can run this report. If I'm doing this in paper and I had to recreate this for discovery, for analyzing a claim, I'm going to spend a lot of money on labor, recreating this information, going through the banker's boxes, trying to find all this data that needs to, and identifying these relationships. With electronic information and the paperless projects, you can do it much more efficiently. Now, obviously, going from a paper-based system to electronic, there are going to be challenges. And what we're going to look at is three prime components of those challenges. There's the legal aspect of it. Everybody's going to ask the question, how does this hold up in discovery? There's the contract documents and specifications. So what do I have to do to my front-end specs? And then there's the team buy-in. How do I get contractors to submit information electronically? That's easy. It's the cost savings. But how do I do designers, testing companies, specialty inspectors? I've got a lot of project participants, and I need to get them involved. How do I get them to buy into the system and submit information electronically to me? And so when we start with the first one, the legal one, the first thing is electronic information exchange is completely illegal. Every state, North America, around the world, there's very few areas where electronic information is not supported. Perfect example is here in California, all the court filings must be electronic in PDF format in the state of California. They do not accept paper here when you file any court documents, any court proceedings. So right off the bat, if you do end up in a claim situation, everything's going to have to be converted to electronic if it isn't already there. PDF is the current legal format for document archiving. The judicial system has done a nice job at defining how they want that information submitted. And the nice thing about PDF is it contains the document metadata. And the reason why they selected PDF is this metadata essentially describes the history of that PDF. It tells when the PDF was created, has somebody modified it, what changes have been made to it if somebody has modified it. It's description information about the data in the PDF. The PDFs can be protected. So this way you can lock the PDF so nobody can make changes to it. And again, you've got that audit trail behind it within the metadata. And then it's maintained by ANSI standards. So the nice thing about PDF is even though it was developed by Adobe, is they've turned it over to ANSI, so it's maintained by a neutral party. This way there's no worry about, is the vendor supporting it? Do I have forwards and backwards compatibility? ANSI has done a very nice job at putting together a roadmap for PDF, and the organizations that support PDF are following it. It works out really well. Also on the legal side, we need to look at discovery. This is one of the big concerns that most people are afraid of is, what happens during discovery? What happens when subpoenas go back and forth during discovery? Electronic discovery and litigation has become a very big thing because it's a huge cost savings. And what they refer to in discovery is they call it ESI, electronically stored information. And what the courts have said is that ESI is no less discoverable than paper evidence. And so this way they treat paper and electronic information identical. They believe the electronic records are just as accurate as the paper information submitted in court. And there's statutes at the state levels and also the federal level that have been established in 2006 for the feds and 2009, for example, in the state of California that concern ESI. Each state has some different rules in place for it in terms of how it's treated, but all of them have very standards and functionality as to how it's treated and how it's processed and how it's handled during the discovery phase. And one of those key attributes is that statutory presumption is that computer printout is an accurate representation of computer information it purports to be. So in plain legal or English, this is, if it's stored in a computer system, it's assumed accurate because the computer systems can track the records and the history of that information. So if I print it out for a PC, it's the same thing as if I wet sign it. And so this is a very important caveat to understand that information generated electronically has a complete history and trackability and traceability behind it, sometimes even more detailed than what you get from manually written records. So after we've gotten past the legal side, and one note for you guys too is make sure you check with your legal counsel on what their requirements are. Most of them are all for ESI, but it is definitely something you want to convene with, especially when it comes to individual state requirements, individual municipalities. You may have some unique caveats that you need to contain with. The next component is contract documents and specifications. When you're going to electronic project information tracking, you need to update your specifications. A lot of times clients will have in their specs, it has to be 8 copies of a submittal, 2 copies of an RFI, 3 copies of a drawing, whatever the file format may be. It's typically multiple copies because the specs are based on paper. And it's not just updating those specifications, but it's also the notification clauses. Typically your contracts will have a notification clause in there that says, If the contractor views a claim or a potential change from an RFI or submittal, they have to notify the owner within so many days of that particular RFI response or claim. And so you need to change that from you need to notify us with a written letter to it's an email communication. It's a notification through the project management application. How is that notification to be done? This way the contractor knows the procedures to follow for you guys. And you also need to take a look at the days and the impacts as well. Do you need to wait? Does the contractor still need 30 days to respond to a potential claim? When you're doing it electronically, the information travels a lot faster. They don't have to ship that information around. You can also look at submittal response times. If you're not shipping information from the contractor to the CMs, to the owner, to the designers, to the subs, if it's all going electronically, those response times are going to be a lot shorter. So you can look at your contract documents there and say, hey, there's areas where we can improve our response times because we're no longer relying on these older methods. Also important is the formats of that electronic information. So in your contracts, you need to tell the contractors, how do you want submittals received? You need to tell your designers, how do you want drawings submitted? We recommend CAD format. All the designers should be submitting AutoCAD to their clients because the AutoCAD is a much richer format. It's the vector format, it's got all the details into it, and it's going to provide a lot more value to that client than a PDF. The PDF is just an image format that you lose a lot of value when you go from CAD to PDF. Now, how you convey that information to the contractor is up to you. Some clients will send the CADs over to the contractor. Some will send the PDFs, depending on how you want to control that document. But at least in your specs up front, you're going to state, here's our processes, here's our procedures, here's the information we're going to turn over, and here's how we're going to do it. And then for those people that are involved on subcontracts, just make sure that you review your prime contract and then pass that down to your subs. If the owner is requiring the prime designer to turn in CAD drawings, then you're going to want your architects and your subconsultants to submit CADs to you guys. So you guys aren't recreating the wheel and converting PDFs back into CAD files. With the contract documents, there's a couple different spec sections that you guys can look at, depending on how you guys have written your specs. For example, one of our clients, Corollo Engineers, has written their own section 013220 called Web-Based Construction Document Management. And this is where they call out for the tools and the procedures and how information is going to be conveyed electronically on the project. Another client of ours, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, has written a spec 013130 called Contract Document Management Systems, where they spell out the systems that are to be used and how that information is going to be conveyed to the Bureau. And these spec sections typically go into how our RFIs turned in, submittals turned in, inspector daily reports, pictures, all the different pieces of information can be conveyed to these respective project teams. When you're updating your front-end specs, it's going to depend on the CSI sections. CSI does have predefined specs for construction document management systems for you guys to pick and choose from, and then ensure all the sections are reviewed. So not just the section calling out the system, but then go through the submittals, the RFIs, the pay estimates, the change order sections to make sure they're consistent across those specs. A lot of times these specs have already been written by design consultants, as an example with Corollo Engineers up there at the top. Or we've got samples here at EADOC we can provide you guys with as well to get you started. Now, the third thing is team buy-in. So how do we get the team to buy into using and going electronic on the project? So we've talked about the cost savings, we've talked about the benefits. Everybody says, hey, this is great. The first step is we have to make sure the client's on board. We have to make sure that the owner of this project that is spending the money to design and construct this capital project is on board with electronic information. Because if they're not, it's going to be very tough to get the team on board. The owner has to recognize that the total cost savings is rolling up to them, and the big benefit is the facility owner, and that the cost savings of the contractors and designers and time and money of this whole team is going to roll up to the owner and give the owner a higher quality project at a lower cost, completed on time. And so once the client is bought into the system, then you can go ahead and start to begin the procedure of how do I get the team to buy in. And so you're going to work with your designers and engineers on selecting technology and establishing procedures for communicating this information. Are we going to use FTP sites, project management applications? How do we move large drawings back and forth? How do we handle this off to the contractor? Is it CADs, PDFs? Those are all decisions that you need to review with your designers and your engineers when beginning a project. And the sooner the better. When you first start to bring on those designers, even before you sign their contracts, you should be reviewing the electronic information. Who owns the CAD drawings? Who owns the PDFs? How it's going to be conveyed to the team should all be tracked and identified up front. Then the next component is obviously notifying the project participants through specifications and contract documents. So you want to make sure the whole team is aware of how information is tracked and controlled. So this way, your general design or your prime designers, your general contractors can pass this information on down to their subs. And then once you've got those notifications and you've told the team what you use, then you're going to set up and customize those solutions to meet the project requirements. One thing to keep note of is going paperless does not require changes to management processes. How you guys review RFIs, review submittals, review pay estimates is still going to be done the same. If a pay estimate requires 3 users to approve it, you're going to do 3 users. Going digital is essentially automating the processes and requires a different set of tools for those reviews. So you may be putting your stamps on it through a PDF stamp instead of physically printing out and stamping it. Your submittal comments, you may be responding back in a form instead of handwriting them on the paper document. So the processes and procedures for the information management is still the same. We're just using different tools to help us improve the efficiency of moving this information. And then the final aspect of team buy-in is train the team. Make sure you've invested time in not only training the client's team, training the contractors, training the designers, but also bringing the subs. If you're using tools that go out and connect the entire project team like EADOC, spend some time making sure all the project participants have been educated on how to submit information electronically and understand the requirements for the project. And so the third component we're going to talk about is tools. So we've gone ahead and we've identified our cost savings. We've got our team to buy in. And so now how do we actually look at going digital? What are some of the tools that we're going to use on this project? Traditionally, we would use copy machines to photocopy paper. An inspector would photocopy a submittal, take a copy with them out into the field. That's no longer necessary because they're going to have a tablet. So it's a different set of tools that the team is using to go electronic on these projects. And with that tablet, the inspector is going to be able to log into it. They're going to access the submittals, the RFIs, change orders, drawings, specs. Everything's going to be on that device. So there's no more need for the photocopiers. In terms of communicating information, we're going to exchange the fax machines and the Excel spreadsheets for collaborative project management applications. So instead of faxing information back and forth, FedExing information back and forth, we're now going to be moving it through the web. We're going to be moving it through email. So there's a lot more efficient tools to move that data, and so we have to keep that into consideration when we set up our tools and procedures. And so this is where we're going to jump out of the EADOC application. We're going to take a look at a couple pieces of functionality here for you guys. The first one is the forms. So we're going to look at how we capture this information. How do we capture a submittal form, capture the data from the contractors. Then we're going to go to reports, access, and the search functionality for you guys. So what I've got here is a wastewater treatment plant upgrade project within the EADOC application. And what we're going to do is go ahead and take a look at a submittal form. We're going to compare this, capturing information electronically, to how we traditionally do this with paper. Now with an electronic system, this form is going to be filled out typically by a contractor or a subcontractor or supplier on the project. And from the day that form begins to be filled out, we're going to track exactly who's creating that information. So all this records retention of who created it, who filled out the form, is all going to be done automatically. And the big advantage here is it's going to populate that history for you guys. So this way I can see exactly when the contractor created the revision, when they submitted it to the facility owner here. I'm going to see when Jim took a look at it, when he put a sticky note on it, who he shared it with, who he's returned it by, modifications, and resubmits. So the complete history of this particular submittal is going to be logged here in the system automatically for you guys. So there's no Excel spreadsheets, there's no labor involved with maintaining the history, there's no need for the transmittals. We're going to eliminate the transmittal document from the projects when you're going paperless. In addition, your submittal forms here, when you're managing information electronically, you can do some real high data quality functionality. And by data quality, I mean drop-down menus. So this way, your contractors, on their submittal forms, they can identify a physical location where this material is located. If they're filling out a paper submittal cover sheet or a paper transmittal, and they're manually entering this, you're not going to be able to navigate to the power generation building to see all the information related to it. These are things you cannot do with paper unless you invest a lot of time and resources into manually recreating this in an Excel spreadsheet. And then from the submittal list here, I'm going to be able to navigate back to that relevant document. And so this navigation, the ability to quickly find information, is magnified with electronic tools that you don't get with your traditional paper processes. Same thing we talked about, reusing information when it goes to operations and maintenance. I can track all my documents and communication around these cooling water pumps. So I can see the submittals, the RFIs, material inspection reports, daily logs, all tied to these cooling water pumps. So when I turn this data over to my operations and maintenance group, they have a list of everything related to the pumps. They're going to be able to see the O&M manuals, the product data, the test reports, everything that's been tracked related to these pumps. And so they can move this data into their FM system, or they can reuse it in another structure or format to operate that facility. Traditionally, most submittals have required a link to a spec and a drawing. What is the contractor, what spec and drawing is the contractor submitting under? Traditionally, they would enter that in a form, print it out, and hand it to you. With EADOC, when you click on the drawing, SDS17 here, I can see here's a version of the drawing in PDF. Click on links, and I can see all the documents relevant to the drawing. And this is great for the reviewers because they can open up a drawing and see all the submittals. They can see RFIs, design clarifications, versions, everything relevant to this particular drawing here. And it's all linked in a list form. So it gives them some very powerful tools to identify, hey, has there been a change to this drawing before I review the submittal related to it? And then from this list of documents, they can always go back to their pending submittal. Then with electronic information, typically a lot of your submittals are being turned in PDF. PDF we were finding is one of the most common standards as far as conveying O&M manuals, warranties, test reports across the team. You can move large files, half a gig in size per individual file through the EADOC application. Now with the information here in the system, receiving it from the contractors is the first step. Once you receive the information, then you want to do things like post notes on it. Say, for example, you want to put a note to the designers. And when you first attach the note, initially it's only seen internally. Now with EADOC, when you're attaching this note, we're going to log that in history for you. Traditionally, if you put a sticky note on a document and it fell off in the FedEx envelope, you lost the sticky note. Electronic, not the case. That note's going to travel with that document. And with going electronic, you can also control where that note goes. So initially, this note is an internal one within my facility owner firm here. When that submittal gets sent out to my reviewers, I have the option of sending it to multiple reviewers, send it to a designer, send it to a consultant, and also I can do a pass the ball in court or assign responsibility. I can include my note to go with it, and then I can alter the due dates. So this way, very quickly, I can change the due dates for my reviewers, I can pass on the note, I can assign responsibility, and with the click of a button, I've sent this submittal to them. And they're going to get an email notification that says they've received the submittal. No need to wait for the UPS truck, the FedEx guys, the information's there. And they're expecting it because they've known ahead of time that says, hey, we're going to do information electronically. We're going to be able to respond back to the submittal. It's all been put in the specs, so the project team knows, hey, we're going to do all of our design firm response and submittal comments through the EADOC application. And with those comments, they're going to be able to attach the files as well here, mark these up, and send them back to you guys for review. And again, it's always going to be updating the history. So this way, when you do that approval, you can capture those comments. And so everybody can take advantage of those statistics that East Bay Mud was getting in terms of approval, select a code, and then select from the list of the actions. And now I've notified the contractor that's been approved. No need to fill out a transmittal form. No need to fill up a box with multiple copies and ship it to the contractor. A couple clicks of a button, and I've notified the team. So there's huge advantages to going electronic in terms of capturing the information. So I'm gaining much higher quality information. I've got a lot more navigation capabilities here in the system. And then I can use it for clicking on these links and navigating around between the relevant data. So the forms are really beneficial for you guys. And keep in mind, all these forms can be customized. A perfect example is like the submittal types. If I want to run a report that says, give me all my shop drawings, I can run a submittal log that shows me just all the shop drawings. If I want to show me a report that says, give me all my O&M manuals, I can add that filter criteria in there. So it gives you guys a lot more control, a lot more accountability, and reuse of the information than you get traditionally. Now, the next part we're going to talk about is the reporting. So with the reporting, with all this information stored, this is where one of those large time savings comes into play for you guys, is the ability to take a look at a pending submittal log. So with that history automatically being tracked, it's also going to track approval codes, pending on, ball in courts, due dates for you guys automatically. So this way, to create a submittal log, I just hit run. And if I want, I can go in and I can customize my reports. So for example, we talked about creating a submittal log. Let's take a look at all the submittals that are shop drawings. And within my submittal here, right now I've got the submittal types checked. So I'm going to create a custom report. It's going to show me just shop drawings. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to filter by type. So I want to see all the submittals that are just typed shop drawings. And then I want to say, okay, I want to see the pending and the closed ones. They're typed shop drawings for this particular project. Now I'm going to come down here. I'm going to pick and choose my columns. What information do I want included in my report? So I want some different fields here. I can move those fields around. And I'm not manipulating data like I would have to do with an Excel report. I'm just manipulating my report form here. And so I can customize my labels. And so this way each user can pick and choose how they want that information presented to them. Save my report, and then click Run. So this is going to show me all the submittals that are a type shop drawing. I can see closed, pending, the various statuses. I can group by them here. So I'm going to group by the various statuses, who submitted it, days outstanding, dates submitted, the action codes, all there for you guys here in the system. So it gives you a very powerful tool to access the information without having to maintain a spreadsheet. I'm not having to re-enter the date and time when I receive this information. I'm not having to enter the date and time I respond back. It's all here in the system for you guys. Additionally, in the system, the reports are interactive. So unlike an Excel spreadsheet where I'd have to go open up the submittals or open up my banker's box, I could click on it and it takes me directly to it here in the system. And so this way I can use my report tool, not just to give me a list of all the submittals with the O&M manuals on it, or the shop drawings in this case, but I can also use it for navigation. So I can drill down and do it directly, and it takes me directly to it here in the system. And then we've got some added functionality like version control. The versions are linked together, and so we can tell a user, hey, this is an old version. With the paper process, you'd have to either go back to that old submittal and put this red flag on it, or you would have to make sure that you're looking at the current version and the old version are next to each other. So this way users knew what the new one and the old one is. Doing it electronically, I can easily navigate between the two, and I always know what the current one and the old one is here in the system. Now with electronic information, we were talking about access. So with EADOC, it's a web-based application. So this is going to allow users to access the system from any web browser with an internet connection. And this is how managing information electronically really provides a lot of benefits. As we showed the screenshot with the guy with the tablet in the field, talking about reducing time and cost savings. If I can access this information in the field, my submittals, my RFIs, my change directives, my inspections, it's all there for you guys. I don't have to walk back and forth to the trailer. The worst thing that can happen is an inspector, they go out to the field, they're getting ready to do an inspection, say on my cooling pump test, and they get out there and they find out that says, hey, they need a copy of the specification. Back to the office they go, they pick up a copy of the specification, they read up on it. They go back out to the field and they start going through the specs and something's not right and it turns out there's a change order. The pump in the field is different than what the pump was in the specs, and so then they have to look up the change directive. When they have it all accessible through a tablet, you can click on that information and it's all here. I can see my specs are here. I'm going to see all my change directives are here. Everything relevant to that particular pump or room or location I'm inspecting is all here in the system. A perfect example of an efficient tool for an inspector is looking at my reference locations. So I can look at my power generation building here, click on links, and I can see all the submittals relevant to this particular area I'm inspecting. And I can see my inspection requests, I can see drawings, change directives. It's all here in a nice organized, structured fashion for me. So it makes a very powerful tool for the project participants, the inspectors, the superintendents, the contractors, the testing companies, to all access the data they need very quickly to do their jobs. And the key thing is browser independence. It doesn't matter which tablet the inspector is using, it doesn't matter which PC, laptop, as long as they have an internet connection and access to their information with electronic, it can be conveyed to them. And that goes back to selecting your tools. When you're looking at tools for managing information electronically, you really want to take into play access. If you stored all this information on a server in the job site trailer that only certain users have access to, you're eliminating a lot of the benefits. You want to make sure that the way you store this data, electronic information, is accessible to the team. You still need to control the individual user's access through permissions and organization permissions and make sure Jim here only sees the information he has access to on the project, but you don't want to control it through the devices. You don't want to say, okay, Jim, anytime you want to access information, you have to go to the one computer in our office, because that doesn't help them in the field. needs to access it through any device. And then one of the big benefits of electronic information access is searching. And so I talked about a little bit earlier, if I want to find all the information about a 50 horsepower pump, I can pump in a keyword. And with searches, it's a very powerful tool. So for example, when I initially punch in 50 horsepower pump here, it's going to find me every submittal, RFI, change order with the words 50 HP and pump in it. But with searching, I can redefine that, and I can say, okay, I want to find everything with this exact phrase in it. So I want to find everything with the 50 horsepower pump. And so it's narrowed it down to some pump submittals. And so very quickly, I can find those submittals and drill down into them for my search results. And this is a huge benefit, quickly finding the information you need. If you've been working on a project for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, there's a large volume of data that you need to search through very quickly. And to have to go through banker's boxes and Excel spreadsheets is going to be a huge waste of time, and it's going to expose you to a lot of risk. If the project manager doesn't remember exactly what the RFI was or the submittal was, or the inspector misses something about change, that's the risk to a cost or an issue with the plant later on down the line. And the electronic information management and going paperless eliminates a lot of those risks for you guys. Once again, I'd like to thank you guys all for joining our series. This wraps up our series of webinars for 2012. We will be relaunching this series again in January of 2013. We're going to be spacing them out a little bit more and making some tweaks to the content based on some of the feedback that we've gotten from some of the previous webinars for you guys. And then also we'll be posting the recordings and the PDFs from these webinars to our website for you. Look for that email to come out early next week, letting you guys know that content is available, and then my contact information.